Hey, Alex, thanks for letting me lead off again here. This week, our guest is a business manager, and I think it's our first go-around with a business manager.
Yeah, and I'm a little surprised that it's taken us this long to sort of do this because, about when we talk to the tech directors, about half of them report to the business manager and about half of them will report to the superintendent. We've had plenty of superintendents on the show, but our first business manager. So I think this is going to be an interesting conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's go find out.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Learning Through Technology, a K12 podcast. We have a great guest on the show today. We'd like to welcome Bo Charlton, who is the business manager at Cashmere School District in Washington State. I lived in D.C., Washington, D.C., so I have to always refer to the state of Washington as Washington State. Bo, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you guys for having me. We are, Cashmere's a small little school district in the center of Washington. We have about 1,575 students in our district here. And our district is a real close-knit community. Agriculture is big here, so we have a lot of apple production and other fruits across the area here. But that's what we're most known for, is our agriculture and just the beautiful area we live in. So Cashmere is a really cool district, and this is my second year in the district. Before that, I worked at ESD, is what they're called in Washington State. It's an education service district. So that's kind of where I got started in the business manager role. And things are going great here. Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. Is it a K12 district?
Yep, we're K12, and we have about 3 buildings. So we have 3 schools. We got elementary, middle, high school.
All on the same campus, or are you guys spread out?
Slightly spread out, but within a mile radius.
Okay, that's great.
Bo, did you end up working in schools and in K12 on purpose or accident, happy coincidence? But you've had a couple of jobs now in it, and being a business manager, you have other opportunities. It's not like you were a teacher and you had to go into teaching. So how did you end up in schools?
That's a great question. And both my parents are educators. My mom's a teacher, my dad's an administrator. So I kind of got to see it growing up and kind of seeing how schools really work and what it's like from the administration side of things. So I was kind of targeting school finance out of college. COVID was in the peak when I was graduating college. So I graduated in 2021. So that threw a whole nother wrench in the whole, job search and everything else. But, I've been very fortunate, got some great opportunities. And, this was kind of my target coming out of school, and it's so far so great. And I really loved it.
It's funny that, you're our first business manager. I think Alex and I did some math, and we've probably recorded about 50 podcasts now. I can't believe I spent that much time with Alex without breaking out in hives, but it's been successful so far. So we're gonna try for 51 here. But you're our first business manager, and it's kind of reassuring to me that you set out to be in education and that you've seen the other side, how educators think about their schools and the things they go through, because we talk about in technology, the most important thing is the education. I tell people this about EduTech, our company, that the edu comes before tech because the learning comes before the technology. And it's really good to know. And we didn't know that before right now that you'd set out for a school and that you had educators as parents. So you knew what you were getting into and still decided to get into it. That's great. So we'll move on a bit here, and I want to ask you. You've been at this for a few years. You're your second year in the school. Tell us something about something you're proud of that you've accomplished there, or you and your team have accomplished, or that a success in general.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it, and at the end of the day, we're here for the students, right? We're here for every kid across the district, right? Whether they're just walking through the doors as kindergarten or getting them up through graduation at 12th grade. And at Cashmere, we really focus on the students. I think that's kind of what makes Cashmere a little special, is just that kind of high school experience, but not just at high school, across the district, the educational experience. We want our students enjoying coming to school each day. So, it's hard to pinpoint just one success, but I would just like to highlight what we got going here is a really good thing. And I like to think that as a whole, our staff really care for our students. And that's one thing that really, I'm still kind of new in my career here, but I just kind of feel like something's different in Cashmere. And I think that's what it stems from, is that our students and our staff really care about our students. And I'd say that's probably, that translates to a lot of different things, from extracurriculars to, our graduation rates, and then our students going on to post-graduation, whatever they choose to do, whether it's trades or going into universities. We have a lot of pride in Cashmere, and I think that shows in our students, and then, how many of those students come back to Cashmere. So
that's great.
It's hard to pinpoint. You ask for individual success, but I just like to highlight, like I said, what we got going.
That's great. Do you have, so small district, central Washington, are you reasonably rural?
Very rural. We're about 2.5 hours from Seattle and about 2.5 hours from Spokane. So we're right dead center,
literally in the middle.
Yeah.
Literally in the middle.
So a lot of times, even when they have high graduation rates, small rural towns struggle to get students matriculating to trade schools, universities, advanced education, whether degree or not, advanced education. But it sounds like you guys have that. Is that correct? Am I hearing that right?
We, being in an agricultural community, we do have a lot of students that maybe don't necessarily want to pursue that. They want to go down different routes, whether that's, that maybe we've got a lot of pathways here. And I think that just making sure that students, whatever they want to do, we have the resources available to help support them to get to that end goal. One thing that we've been doing more recently is internships, and kind of, allowing those to really allow students to be exposed to different things while they're still in high school, whether it is, working in the medical field or whether it is working in the agricultural field. It's just kind of exposing our students in high school to as much as they can so that they can be more prepared as they graduate.
That's great.
So, Bo, since you're our first business manager, I'm going to stick with business management a little bit here for a second. Could you share with us the hierarchy? Like, what parts of the organization, the school district, report to you as business manager, and who you report to as the business manager, and just what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah. We're, like I mentioned, we're a small district, right? And we wear a lot of different hats. So as far as like the hierarchy and order of operations, I would say that, it starts with the superintendent, of course, right? And our superintendent, he's been here for, over 20 years. So he has a well-oiled machine and what we got going here in Cashmere. And from that, it just kind of trickles down. We got our building administrators, and then we got our district administrators. And then as a business manager, I have my hands in a lot of different aspects on the kind of operational side of things, whether it's food service or, transportation, just kind of making sure we're all on the same page. But at the end of the day in Cashmere, it's, we all kind of oversee different aspects on the administration side of things. So there's not really like an order of operations necessarily. But I would say our principals, building administrators report directly to the superintendent. I report to our superintendent. And then our tech director kind of also just reports directly to the superintendent. And then everything else kind of, filters down.
So this is a learning through technology podcast, and we have a lot of technology directors or academic tech folks and that kind of folks who are part of this audience. Does technology report to you?
It's hard to say yes, they do report to me, because we're really close knit, right? You can pop into my office, you can pop into the superintendent's office and kind of get the same result at the end of the day. But yes, we do all kind of flow through the same communication channels. So it is a constant ebb and flow of myself and the superintendent, the tech director and myself. And we just we don't necessarily think of it as like who we talk to, who we report to. It's more just, this is the problem we got, how are we going to get it done? Or, whatever comes across.
So what kinds of technology initiatives are you working with the technology team on?
Yeah, E-rate. E-rate's a big one, right? That's every district across the country is working on an E-rate. So that's always something that takes a lot of planning. ESSER. So, during COVID, we got this extra money from the feds, and those the ESSER funds. So how we were able to not only utilize those that help set us up for the future, but how did we do one-time only purchases that, didn't create as big of an ESSER cliff? And one of the things we did is technology. That was one area that we really focused on utilizing our ESSER funds with. And from that, planning for the future, right? When you buy a lot of Chromebooks and you buy a lot of staff workstations, eventually those are going to come to a point where they need to be swapped out or changed. So it's how do you plan for that in the future to kind of avoid those cliffs, a couple years from now or 5 years from now. So a lot of planning goes into our technological plan here. And that's kind of where we're at. on the budgetary side. Maybe this budget isn't necessarily looking at 1 year only. Maybe it's a 3-year budget, and how we're going to encompass those plans with the tech department.
So, Bo, ESSER is an excellent topic that is especially pertinent since we're talking to you. We do know that those funds are now exhausted. And like you said, lots of schools, including it sounds like Cashmere, bought a lot of technology. What are you doing to what are you doing to sustain that? But let me put it in this case in that it might be both a pro and a con. We like to ask, like, what are your challenges and what are you succeeding at? So you had a success in buying all that technology. I imagine it's a challenge. What's your plan? Even if you don't know what you're doing now, what's your process look like for figuring out what a post-ESSER budget looks like while maintaining what you've got?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is communication, right? I don't know what I don't know. Our tech directors don't know. We're not having the open form of communication there. So I think the first thing we did this year was we not only looked at our budget in a 1-year cycle, but we tried to map out what the next 5 years looks like. What's the next 8 years look like as far as our technological needs? We know that we have student devices. We have enough on hand right now. We know those are going to start hitting about 2028. What's that plan look like? Are we going to tackle it by building? Are we going to tackle it by department? Are we going to tackle it? How are we going to get new devices in the hands of the students that are relevant at that time, right? We can't make decisions for 2030 right now. We don't even know what the technology is going to be looking like or what the needs are going to be that. So it's just kind of this constant communication chain. So I think that's probably the first step, was figuring out what ESSER, what do we purchase? What was our biggest needs? How do we set ourselves up best for multiple years? And then from there, how are we going to determine what the biggest needs are on a timely basis? And then how do we plan for that?
Where are you finding the funding for replacements of things that were funded by one-time monies?
That's a great question. So we have, I'm not exactly sure how it works across the country, but here in Washington State, we have, just levies like anybody else, our EP&L levies, operational levies. Part of our levy plan is we do support student technology and making sure our students have the technology that they need and the resources. So that's one area. We also use program dollars, when applicable.
Sure.
So whether that's, federal or state program dollars.
Yep.
That's the second kind of funding source. And the third and, most prominent probably is just making sure that when we're developing a budget, we're allocating some of our resources to, student technology needs. So we work with our tech director every single year. We look at what the needs are, what needs to be replaced, cameras, keyless entries. There's a lot that goes into technology that's not just necessarily a student device in hand.
Oh, yeah.
And making sure we're all on the same page there.
Yeah, absolutely. Bob and I have chuckled about how the role of the technology director has changed over the years. And now it's to the point where anything that plugs in, it seems to be the tech department's responsibility. If it's an electric pencil sharpener, that's our responsibility. But somebody's got to keep these things humming. So, Bo, has AI played a role in any of the work that you guys have done in the district recently?
Yeah, AI is. I'm using it often, right? I think everybody is eventually going to kind of whether they know it or not, they're using AI in some way of shape or form.
Right.
We here in Cashmere, we're in the process of developing an AI policy. It is from the board of directors, all the way down to our, teachers. We want to make sure we have really clear outlines about what uses of AI are allowable versus not allowable, which, grade levels are going to be expected to kind of be exposed to AI in a sense. And I think more than anything, we have a collected commitment to making sure that we're not letting AI replace what we've got going here in Cashmere. We got a really good thing going with our students and our teachers. However, there's a lot of enhancements that could come from AI. And whether that's just administrative efficiencies or if it's how do we expand critical thinking with the help of AI, that's kind of what we're looking at and how we go about this policy. We have an assistant principal that's kind of taking the lead on developing kind of the staff-wide plan with AI it's a team effort, right? Our superintendent's very involved. But more than anything, it's just how are we going to get our staff, our teachers, equipped with AI, knowing the expectations, how do they communicate that to the students and getting them the tools they need. We're devoting some of our professional development days this year. When in August, coming back to the school year, we're actually having AI be a critical kind of main theme this year. And it's how our, different staff members, key leaders have attended some professional development over the course of the past year and a half or so. And now they're going to be asked to be peer mentors and kind of share some of the strategies and tools that they've learned with some of the staff members that maybe haven't been exposed to it as much. So we're kind of really diving into AI this upcoming year. But I want to really be clear. We're diving into AI with guardrails. We're diving into AI with a really clear vision of we're not changing what's working. It's all about enhancement.
Bo, it's very encouraging to hear that you're spending. We know how valuable those professional development days are, and trying to get them in, aside from all the stuff you have to do every year, CPR training and recertification for this, and then different state requirements. But that you're dedicating that time. Do you think that your policy that you're working on, is it more aimed at staff, teaching staff, or students, or both? What are we looking at?
That's a great question. I think the clearest way I can describe it is our policy is more driven from the student side of thing, as far as how do we expect our students to utilize different things. But more than anything, it's going to be clear communication from the board, the district, on what do we expect our staff, and how do we make it look the same in each building, right? And AI is changing, right? Think about how much 2 years ago, some people didn't know what ChatGPT was. Now it's a common everyday terminology we just throw around. We know that this policy is going to morph and change, yearly, if not sooner. So it's just making sure that our, staff, our students, and our, expectations are all the same, and they're changing as needed. So we're kind of in the early stages here of this process. However, we do want to make sure we have really clear guidelines for our students going forward this upcoming school year, and then how our staff's communicating that to our students.
I think you kind of struck on one of the things that makes AI policies uniquely complex, right? Is that how do you create something that's relevant enough in a field that changes so quickly, but high level enough that it can sort of create those guidelines. We have one of our top speakers in AI, or consultants in AI and educational collaborators, Lindy Hockenberry, she spoke at a conference that we hosted, and she was making changes to her. She was doing a keynote on this. She was making changes up until the morning of the keynote, right? She said, because things are changing so fast. She said, activities that I had in our session, she said, they changed the night before last. And I had to understand these things and make these changes day of. And so I find that when we're working and talking to schools about some of the policies that they're creating, that they tend to sometimes dive too far into the weeds and struggle a little bit with making a policy that's not going to be relevant, or at least part of a policy that isn't going to be relevant a week later, or certainly a year later. What are you guys thinking? And I know you're still in the process, but that's why this is a fun conversation right now. Where are you guys in the process of thinking about how do you make adjustments to a field that changes so drastically, so rapidly?
You hit on the head, right? It changes. Everything's changing, right? When we started this AI adoption policy,
wait, when did you start?
I was first part of conversations last, let's say February, March of last year, and we knew we wanted to have some guidelines, right? We knew we wanted to have some system
since that started, even.
Yeah, exactly, right? We knew we wanted to have some system-wide commitments to certain, guide rails. We want to make sure that our staff know exactly what is allowable and not allowable from our board of directors. From that, though, is morphed into kind of okay, how do we make sure it looks the same in different classrooms? How do we utilize which subjects allow for AI and artificial intelligence? And there's just this broad conversation that's taking place right now of what is the role of a policy versus what is a handbook versus what is just teacher expectations. And then kind of how do we just make those, really core beliefs and core commitments? How do we make sure those are not going away with the help, with AI being introduced? And this whole conversation now, we just had a board meeting, not too long ago where we were talking about AI, and there were some great questions brought up. And from those questions, it's changed our policy, right? It's going to change our approach to finishing this policy out. And I think that's just kind of this is new, right? We're all learning at the same time, and we're all kind of figuring this out at the same time. But I think that we have a really good approach to how we're going about our policy. And we don't need to get something as quickly as possible. We want to get something that's tangible and that we're going to use going forward.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, going forward, I think is a journey, especially with AI, right? And it's going to need to continue. right. So Bob started by asking some of the successes, and then we even got into this process of the AI stuff, which I think is presenting as many challenges as it presents successes. But that's fine. I mean, that's schools, right? I mean, that's what we do. But let's chat a little bit about some of the specific challenges that you guys are dealing with. What are some of the challenges that you guys are wrestling with at the district right now?
I think AI is from a just 10,000 foot view, right? It's like the fear is that it's going to take over how you think, and it's going to limit your critical thinking. As far as when I type something in there, I say, hey, draft me a paragraph that talks about food service and how we're going to change food service up this year, and it could give you a million different ways, and so when you see that from a really far perspective, or if you're not super familiar with artificial intelligence, you can say, whoa, hang on a second. Where's the critical thinking in this? I think it's all about messaging and making sure that people realize that artificial intelligence isn't necessarily replacing that critical thinking piece of it. It has to come from a human thought, and has to, we're enhancing different aspects of it. And then how do you communicate that to staff members that maybe aren't super, confident in AI or feel like it's a waste of time? And it's just all that there's just a lot of new challenges going on with AI, and how is it going to be used in schools, and how is it going to be used in the business world, and just making sure that, it's okay that people aren't super familiar with it, but we're having these conversations now, and we're kind of setting the table for the next couple of years to I personally don't think AI is going away. So it's all about how we adapt and learn.
How's that going away?
Well, so I spoke a little earlier on about the resistance by some or many to AI, in that whole critical thinking, or is it your own work, or what defines your own work in a world of AI? So how does a small school district in central Washington handle that, both the professional development and the explanation of the benefits or the necessity of that, of learning this skill set?
I think at the end of the day, right, it's up to an individual basis. And it's if you want to dive into it and you want to kind of see the aspects of it, that's great. But I think keeping that open mind is just having that conversation that here's what we're committed to. We know that it is not going to do X, Y, and Z. That is not going to replace us, a teacher working with students one-on-one directly. We just know that we're collectively committed to, let's say 3 or 4 core values around AI. And then how we branch off from that, that's where we kind of need to, learn as we're going, right? We know we're not going to have all the answers come day one. We know it might take a couple years till we finally hammer in exactly, what we want our AI policy and AI to look like in our Cashmere School District here. And I think that making sure that we're okay having the patience to really not get ahead of ourselves, I think that's important too. Making sure that we know this is a process, not a quick and easy fix. So I think, it's just keeping that communication open amongst all staff members, amongst all parents, right? Parents are another aspect. Some parents probably are hesitant to have their student using AI in schools, and that's absolutely okay. So it's just making sure we're all on the same page, committed to the same aspects, and learning as we go. Because I think this is not going to go away. It's here. So it's just how we roll that out from a district level and as a community level. I think that's important.
Yeah. What about other challenges in terms of you're the business officer. So, money, right? Are there funding challenges? What's driving the funding challenges? And then how are you dealing with that?
Absolutely. There's funding challenges. I mean, when you think about like ChatGPT, for example, right? It's a monthly subscription that as a district, if you have every single staff member and student hooked up to ChatGPT, you'd be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Yeah. And we can't afford that, right? You have to live within your means. So it's how do you find safe? How do you find useful platforms out there? And something we're kind of dipping our toes into this year is a product called Magic School. Mm-hmm. And that's something that it was financially advantageous in the sense that we can afford. It was within our budget. And on the flip side, it kind of checked some of those safe guidelines that we wanted. And it was designed for K12 education, which at the end of the day, that's why we're here, right? So we kind of are learning, leaning into that this year. And that's kind of the product we're kind of having our staff focus on as they start this year.
Nice. Are you guys a Google or a Microsoft district?
A little bit of both. Our buildings are more Google driven and our staff are more on the Office 365 side of things.
have you guys been looking? So we're partners, PD partners with both of those organizations. And on the student side, which is if your buildings are more on Google, there's really, particularly at ISTE this year, Google really announced a lot of the Gemini features that used to be, and the full adult paid for version have been sort of clean and structured and put into the Google Workspace, right? So they're accessible now to the students as well. Has that been part of your work?
We haven't really. We wanted to make a collective commitment to one product and then really to try to learn that well, right? So I wouldn't say discouraged, but as a district and as a leadership team, we kind of wanted to make sure that what we were choosing as a team was going to be uniform. We didn't want a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Now, mind you, I'm personally using ChatGPT a lot. I'm using Copilot sometimes. Like I'm using different AIs for the different needs that come up. So we're not, hesitant to let staff, explore and kind of when they need something else. But as far as like a district-wide commitment and for our students and staff, right now it's Magic School is kind of what we're leaning into.
Great.
Bo, it's hard to believe that we have been at this for nearly 30 minutes now, which is what we promised our audience and you, that we would keep it in those parameters. But we have one more question that we ask of everybody. So put on your thinking hat here. This is the most important question I will ask you today. We all have had I won't frame it like that for you, Ox. Do you have a favorite teacher or an educator who positively impacted you? And would you like to share their name and your story about them?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. When I think of positive teachers that I've had in my lifetime, I instantly thought of in high school, it's a Manson High School. So that's about an hour from me here in Cashmere. And I had a history and social studies teacher there named Mr. Soliday. And Mr. Soliday, Brad Soliday, he just made learning fun. He had really high expectations for us students, but I love history. I love learning. We had some cool classes. We had military history, which was a lot of fun. US, he made learning about a subject could sometimes be portrayed as boring, and we made it really interesting. But on top of all of that, he had a lot of other aspects that I really respected as a teacher. So I would say Mr. Soliday from my high school days was a great great teacher that I had.
And you'd say you didn't really have to think about that. You knew that right away. I could tell by the look on your face as soon as I asked the question. You knew who you were going to talk about.
Yep. No, that was a no-brainer for me. But growing up, just like Cashmere, right? Manson is a really small school district. A lot of great staff there, and a lot of great memories for sure.
We have a little ongoing bet, Bo, that I think that people will sometimes need to reflect on that question. And Bob's like, no, everybody knows that right off the top of their head. For the record, he's won pretty much every time. I think I have 3 wins in our 50 episodes. So that was excellent. Do you mind if we dig in just a little bit? Because you said there were also just some other things that just made him so special. Can you share some of those?
Yeah. He was also my middle school basketball coach, and he was also, very involved in just kind of that school spirit and culture of, what does it mean to be a Manson Trojan, and kind of what's it mean to be a responsible member of society, and kind of some expectations outside of the school world of what it means to be, just a certain standard of person that we strive to be, and he just kind of made that expectation really clear from a young age. And in a small town like that, in a small school district, when the people you interact with on a day-to-day basis kind of set that standard, I think it helps a lot from the community aspect. And I just know, myself included, and a lot of my friends that I grew up with would probably say the same things, that they remember those conversations. And it means a lot, when you grow up and you kind of think back on, okay, yep, we all kind of had that same idea going forward, and we knew what he was talking about back then. And now that you're in the adult world, you see how it plays out. And so I don't know if that made any sense, but there was kind of some standards.
I think it's great.
Alex, I think that's a common theme, actually, is high expectations. We both know, you don't know this, Bo, but Alex is completely aware of my less than stellar high school academic career. And, but of my there are 2 in my world, but they were both teachers who had high expectations for me, even though I did not have them for myself. And I think that is a common theme, is is high expectations is something that endears students to teachers, even if not all teachers believe that.
But I think it helps students see more in themselves, see more than they originally saw in themselves, right?
It certainly did for me.
Yeah, and I think that's a great management trait as well, right? And so I just think it's a good human development trait. So, Bo, this was great. Thanks so much for joining us today. This was a great conversation. If I'm up in Washington, we've got a couple customers in your area. I would love to come and visit your campus and get to know your district. But this was great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Alex, our first business manager all wrapped up. What did you make out of that?
Lots of great things, but I think the nugget that I pulled the most from is their work on AI policy. So first off, I really appreciate that the business manager took such an active role in something that is so impactful to the program, right? Because sometimes business managers tend to stay at that 30,000 foot view and don't get into the weeds on things that are going to impact the classroom. So I thought Bo is unique, and I think, as parents, as educators and administrators probably influence that. But I thought it was great to see them getting the real work done in a real process-oriented way on AI.
Yeah, I can't imagine starting that. They started that policy 18 months ago, and
I know.
It's easily the earliest I've heard of any school starting a policy like that. I mean, we have schools that I work with that are still kind of, I won't say paralyzed, but they're still looking for where to get that traction. And, I've made the recommendation that they talk to you and educational collaborators, because they're the people who know AI. The smartest AI person I know is a collaborator. So that's where I think that the other schools that are looking to follow Bo and his school's lead should turn.
Yeah, I think, the understanding the difference between policy and practices is huge in this. And I think a lot of schools, they want to make sure that their area policy is really reflective of the culture that they have, which I think we really heard from Bo. But you really need to understand sort of what are the parameters of what's a policy versus what's a practice needs to be determined first. Because when you understand that, you kind of set the stage for which where your culture needs to play in those spaces. And so, and I think that's one of the advantages that our collaborators have, because they've done this with so many districts, right? They kind of understand some of those differences.
And that's exactly what I was getting at, Alex. That explanation is why I turned to you and educational collaborators for help with these things.
Well, another good episode. Bob, this was great. Until next time, my friend.